we're giving AI too much credit. We're getting very excited and swept away and assuming that capabilities exist that just aren't there yet. I'm not going to say Gen AI doesn't do cool things and doesn't generate interesting output, but I feel like it's really the combination of our brains interpreting the results that really give it meaning.
All right. Hey, Maritza, morning. How are you?
Doing well. Good morning to you. How are you doing, JJ?
Pretty good. Hey, it's our first one of these. I'm not quite sure what to call it. Is it like coffee with Maritza? We'll figure it out. But we'll,
Definitely we'll brainstorm it workshop it while we're going.
let's just workshop it live. Thanks for doing this with us. So we're doing this with the Ethical Tech Project, which is a think and do tank that we're both on the board of. And for everybody listening, the idea is that we want technology should be in support of human flourishing. We're out there trying to advocate for an ethical internet. We're going to unpack what that means. We want to be people friendly on this one, right? Like no jargon, no wonkiness. Like what are some of these data privacy issues out there? How do we think about AI? We're going to get into all of that. But before we do that, so we have other jobs outside of the Ethical Tech Project. Mine's at Catch, which is a data privacy platform. Yours, Maritza, is super interesting as well. Tell us a bit about your background.
Yeah, sure thing. So I'm a principal at Good Research, and we're a small but mighty consultancy that's working on how do we basically build technology for the world that we want to live in. We want to see a world where everybody's able to have the knowledge and agency to thrive in a digital world. And with that mission, I've always felt that there's a strong affinity to the goals of the Ethical Tech Project, where, like you said, it's sort of, to me, I'm always inspired by the idea of like, what if we built technology toward human flourishing? Like, what if that were a goal? And I feel like if you look at our technology today, it doesn't feel like we're hitting that goal. So lots of room.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear you say that. The technology feels like it's moving pretty fast, and which is could be a good thing, right? It's great. It's great that we're innovating as a society, especially with generative AI hitting the scene last year. It's just a feeling. Like I don't have data to support this, but it just feels like the tech is moving, but the rules and the controls and the policies and like, hey, is that okay that we're doing that? Isn't quite catching up, and it just that gap feels wider than ever.
It does. I have the same feeling. So I'm a technologist by training, and I've been in the space of human-centered security and privacy for about, okay, I guess if I round up, we're getting pretty close to 20 years now. And when I first started, the big exciting thing was like Gmail giving us a huge storage space, which was, freeing that you could like have email and not have to think about like deleting stuff. Huge. That was huge at the time. And then also online banking. So like if I think like when I think back, I'm like, those were such simple times. And then, it was a handful of years later where Facebook really got popular, where they changed, the exclusive access. And then also the iPhone hit the scene, which I think really like the combination of having this device that's always connected to the internet with a huge hard drive plus a camera and ubiquitous internet plus social media, we're in a really interesting space. And I was having this feeling even before this new wave of generative AI. And now with generative AI, it's just like, this is, I want to say almost like terribly exciting. Like it's terribly exciting and also terribly exciting.
It's such a cool term. It is. It does kind of capture the feeling that we have today.
Yeah, I feel it all the time. On the one hand, find it thrilling that we have computer programs that can ingest a ton of data and generate what looks like insightful new thoughts. But then also I know how it works. So I'm kind of, is it new? Is it novel? Like, what is this? I think actually that's like my outstanding question. Like, what is this when I look at the output? And then same for the images and the video. I mean, also as a parent of young kids, I'm very terrified of like rapid deployment safe, without safeguards of these technologies. But also, I mean, yeah, it just feels it feels really exciting. And I feel like also we kind of had hit a lull in like exciting technology. Like I remember like
For a while there, it's like, hey, nothing's happening. The iPhone kind of looks the same. Like, should it be a little different? Should it be like holograms now? And then boom, Gen AI came along.
up until then I was like my most delightful exciting piece of tech was this Lego app where you could like take a picture of your pile and it would like tell you stuff. I'm like I haven't been this excited since like location on a mobile phone. Like that location enhanced services on mobile phone, like that was thrilling. And then like Lego app.
we weren't delighted by technology like we used to. I'm with you on that one. It's funny when I think about it from just a you know we get into privacy, but from a consumer perspective, from just like a normal person perspective, a couple of big trends. Curious what you think about this, Maritza. But one of the big trends was social media hit the scene, and for me, the one of the things that we started to realize, I thought, was, hey, this is free, right? Like this, we're not paying for this, right? There's no
Hmm.
subscription, there's no like annual number that you pay. But and then we found out quickly, oh, we're the product, right? And that whole idea of if
Yep.
you're not if it's free, you're probably the product, and people are like, well, what does that mean exactly? And the second trend, which you kind of touched on, which was our lives just became so digital, almost like an extension of our physical selves. So it's this parallel like digital footprint. And those two things are totally related because we're the product, because our data is valuable to somebody.
I worked at a social media company 2013 to 2014, and I'll always remember that as a pivotal time where social media companies sort of began to crack the net of how to monetize social media users. And not just, I oftentimes feel frustrated with the conversation about advertising on social media because there will be big claims about like social media knows you better than you do. Social media can predict what you want. All like big, lofty claims about like how powerful the algorithms are. And in terms of advertising on social media, in like where the innovation lies, I feel the initial one was in terms of measurement. Like measurement of the effectiveness of an ad came first, and then better targeting came second. And that was fueled by being able to know, for example, like Maritza saw an ad for Tide soap, particularly laundry soap, in her newsfeed, and then she clicked over to Amazon and went and bought it. And then being able to tie that to this advertisement for this person resulted in a sale. I think that level of data really changed groups' like ability to optimize ad campaigns. So to me, it was like that era was like the now that we have measurement, like JG, I feel like you'll probably know this quote. Like, what's the old joke about like half my budget is wasted, half my budget is what is it?
Put me on the spot. It's something like when it comes to advertising, I know half of it works. Yeah, I know
Half
half
work.
of it. Thanks. I love that
Okay.
about podcasts when like the producer jumps in. Yeah, so half of it's working, but I don't know which half is the thing.
So then once you could do measurement, that is different. So now you don't know why it's working, but you know that something is working. And then you can iterate like crazy. And then I feel like this is where I get really excited. Our speed of development, and when I say our, like software companies' ability and website and mobile apps companies' ability to update what you're seeing on the fly and basically turn our digital lives into our digital experience into a never ending sort of lab situation. It's just flywheel nonstop.
It's like this data, it completed the customer journey, or it helped brands and advertisers understand who the person is, and then how different messages, advertisements to them resulted in a
Mm-hmm.
sale. So it's like, marketing, they call it the customer journey. Like this now, this
Mm-hmm.
customer journey was complete. You could see it from
Yes.
beginning to end. One of the ways I think about it, Maritza, that's when we talk about the evolution of data-driven marketing. The example I give is, newspapers like the New York Times back in the day. If advertisers were looking to, you know, put their ad in a newspaper like the New York Times, they wouldn't really know who they're reaching outside of the New York Times telling them, well, hey, these are people that are generally educated. They make
Mm-hmm.
above 100,000. Sometimes they have families. They live in, the cities and stuff like that. And that was enough for advertisers. And then as soon as New York Times and other newspapers moved online, it became, oh, I know exactly what they're reading. So I can
Yes.
tell you that Maritza is a fashionista because she's always on the style page, or she's reading
Yep.
world news, or she's interested in local politics. And you started now with this ability to build audience segments of the types of people that you had based on what they were reading. And then, just to put extra juice on it, you could see what they were reading and into outside of the New York Times. What else are they doing? And so internet technology kind of evolved to that. But then, to your point, once you started to see purchase data and what people were buying, and sometimes that came from credit cards, sometimes it came from loyalty cards. When you're at your grocery store and you have your little loyalty card, that was a free product as well, right? And that data's going somewhere. Now you could connect it all. You could say, oh, here's who this person is. I'll find more like them. Which messages are working?
Yep.
What do I need to say or do to what type of person to get a sale?
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And I would say it's not even just, so I was thinking about the loyalty, when you said loyalty card, and I'm like, we've had loyalty cards for a long time. For as long as I've been shopping in a grocery store, there's been an ability to have a little card, give your phone number, and you get discounts. It's just always been there. And I actually feel then that from a, typical shopper's perspective, it's been a very slippery slope
Hmm.
where what we knew as a loyalty card program on the front end, which is what we see when we go to a store, hasn't changed. But what's going on in the back end is completely different. So, as you were talking about it, you mentioned, it sounded like you were talking about singular first party. The store is using your data. And then you also pulled out the way that credit card companies are getting in on it. Maybe your bank is getting in on it, it seems lately from privacy policy updates, and also data brokers. So, we've quickly, in the past 5, 8, 10 years, moved from your grocery stores using the loyalty card data to optimize for their own purposes to now figuring out, well, who else can I partner with? Like, I have
Mhm.
interesting data, you have interesting data. Interesting things happen when we commingle data. Like, data's become very flirty and exciting, and we haven't put up the guardrails. And we also, I don't think, are being the companies that are using the data aren't being clear with consumers about what is different. The feature feels the same, and the implementation is completely different. And that's always what I'm wanting to talk about. Like, well, how do you do it? What
Yeah,
are you doing, and how do you do it?
it's a whole data ecosystem now with multiple players, as you say. And one of the things that's interesting about that is back to your point about the consumer journey and trying to complete it with data. There were companies who didn't know if you bought their products, didn't know that you specifically bought their products. And what I mean by that is if you're selling cereal in a grocery store, you don't have a direct relationship with the consumer. The grocery store does. So all those, jars of peanut butter on the shelf don't always know who's buying it. But the grocery store does because you're swiping your credit card and you might, have your email address attached to this loyalty card. And so to your point about like bringing in another partner, they start to share data. And the sharing looks something like, hey, peanut butter manufacturer, I can tell you who actually buys your product. So if you want to reach them directly, here's how you do it. I can even give you an email address if you wanted to, or like some digital ID that helps you advertise to that person. And then on the other side of it, the grocery store is like, to me, I don't know how this person got to my store. Was it your advertising that got them there? Was it something else? Was it a TV ad? Was it whatever? So on both sides of this customer journey, you have these consumer goods companies who have a lot of data up front. They see the awareness plays, people see their ads, they see them on TV, they see all that stuff. And then on the other end of the consumer journey, you have the retailers who are completing, who see the transaction happen. And when they start to share data, you start to get this view of the whole customer journey. And then the third layer, as you pointed out, Maritza, was, well, what kind of messaging works? Like, what do I need to say to somebody up front or at any point in the journey to get them to buy more? And so you start to get this idea that the type of person you are, the things that you're into, plus the things that advertisers are saying, there's a combination of those that result in higher sales, and marketers have really dialed that in, and more data just makes that.
Yeah, I love the way that you recap that because as you like as you help synthesize what I was sharing, I'm also thinking about like I think sometimes when I talk about existing technologies, I'll sometimes trend a little bit negative. Like it feels like something is unjust or something's not right, and that there's like a clear problem that we need to fix. But then I always love being in conversation who comes from a different perspective on the work, whereas a marketing professional, as a solutions provider, you're steeped in the positive use cases of the ways in which data is used to optimize things.
Mhm.
And it's a great use of data, right? Like if we're talking about computing, we're talking about data, like there are great uses of it. And then what I feel is that it's like I've had a lot of conversations with product teams where they're being a little bit cagey about what they're doing with the data and how they talk about what they're doing with the data. Not because they think what they're doing is wrong or improper, but because they feel like people won't understand.
Right. And Maritza, like this is, I'm so glad you raised that because, oh man, I think we don't give people enough credit for actually understanding what's going on here. And let me tell you a story. So this is one of my favorite ones. There's a social contract, I think, between brands and consumers. There always has been. One of those I think about, like the start of digital advertising, data-driven marketing, I think was back when you had the first soap opera, Days of Our Lifestyle, right? It was sponsored by
Yes.
these whatever P&G was called back then, Procter and Gamble, but it was soap companies saying, soap basically is a commoditized product. And the only way you could sell more soap is to make it look different, kind of wrap marketing around it, wrap some brand around it. And I don't know when we started using laundry and washing our clothes, but it's like around the time when soap operas came along. The reason they were called soap operas is because soap companies sponsored them. So if you wanted to be delighted with this cool Days of Our Lives content, you had to learn about Procter and Gamble's latest kind of innovation in soap. And the social contract was, hey, if you watch this ad, you're going to get this content. You're going to be able to watch Days of Our Lives. And consumers said, I'm okay with that. Actually, I get something in return, and we call it the value exchange. And it's the same journey. If I'm giving a brand my data, or if I'm letting them see it, whatever that looks like, but in return I'm getting something that's relevant to me, I think that's a good value exchange. And that, to your point, like that can be a positive thing. I don't think we give consumers enough credit for knowing that they understand the value exchange at the heart of this here.
Yeah.
So I think that's important. And then what comes with that should be, okay, let somebody control what data gets shared. Let them delete it if they need to. Let them say, hey, what? Actually, I want you to have it, but I don't want you to
No,
have it.
thank you. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's a
Yeah.
core of a lot of data privacy laws, which we should talk about that on our next session. But what I want to close this session with what is, where do we go from here? We talked about how dizzying some of the innovation is that's happening today. As we move into a world of AI, it gets a little more abstract. What's happening with our data, I feel like, and
Yeah.
all those all the insights that brands get from the customer journey, what messaging works, and who am I actually talking to, just happens at light speed now with AI. And there's a part of me that thinks that's cool, and there's another part of me that thinks that is worried about it because
Hmm.
look, here we are on a video platform, and there could come a time, as well, we're getting recorded, right? It's on video. There could come a time where marketers could access, your pupil dilation. And hey, if I say
Yeah.
this, Maritza's into it, like her pupil dilated by 20%, and she likes, black sweaters with diagonal patterns. And so I just,
Right.
and so how do I keep doing more of that? And there's this real potential where targeted advertising kind of turns into manipulation in that
Yeah.
scenario. And I really worry about that.
Yeah. When I think about the current trends in Gen AI, on the one hand, I think about like, well, what's like this, like, what's my go-to simple explanation of like something we could compare it to? So, like, one of
Okay.
the things that irritates me about the conversation is that I think that we're giving AI too much credit. We're getting very excited and swept away and assuming that capabilities exist that just aren't there yet. I'm not going to say Gen AI doesn't do cool things and doesn't generate interesting output, but I feel like it's really the combination of our brains interpreting the results that really give it meaning. Like, we can look at 10 results and immediately say, like, junk, junk. Okay.
Mm,
Better, better. No. Right? Like, if you think about like the images, like you can look and say, like,
right.
okay, that one has 6 fingers, that one has 7 fingers, that one's got three. Oh, but that one. And that's not AI. That's our brain plus AI. That's,
Mm,
human supported. A place where I start to feel uncomfortable is when there is too much credit given to AI, and then people feel that they are not in a position to say, to reject a result. So, and I like to remind people that a lot of our spell check, the autocorrect, and Siri is a version of machine learning and artificial intelligence. There are algorithms behind it predicting what your words might be based on what you're saying. So always keep in mind how often you're saying, like, darn you, autocorrect, that's not what I say. Ducking, let me say it. Like, there's so many of these examples. So, like, I want people to keep that healthy skepticism of like what it really is. But I feel like we need better public support so that people feel empowered to do that.
Yeah, that's part of what we're trying to do here, and just raise consumer awareness of
Yeah.
what's happening in the world of data and this data ecosystem. What are some of the safeguards and regulations kind of coming around it? What can we do as individuals to help control some of this? Let brands know that, hey, we understand the value exchange, but we need a little more in this relationship. Hey, so thanks for this, Marissa. I really appreciate you doing that.
Sure thing.
Looking to-
As always, a pleasure to be in conversation with you.
Yeah, thanks, Maritza. Thanks, everybody.